Samurai Jack is an incel. Okay, when I was a kid, I never realized how lonely Jack was. I was just more enamored by the fact that he was a lone samurai who barely talked. That was his entire shtick. He'd be walking around quietly minding his own business before swinging his katana around and slicing Aku's cronies. So that would make one obviously believe that Samurai Jack is likely a revenge story. What if I told you Jack is not a revenge story but one huge metaphor for male loneliness? Let me explain.
The Big Dipper.
This actually makes sense when you think about it. Across all 4 seasons, when Jack was venturing throughout the land, trying to go back, you come to the realization that Jack never really had a friend. He never really had an ally, and this is one huge allegory for today's crisis. I'm putting crisis in inverted commas for male loneliness. Some people think it isn't real. Some people think it's self-inflicted. Some people think it's hyperbolic. That's besides the point. Hear me out. In some of the episodes, we would get these flashback scenes of when Jack was a kid. Ever since he was young, he's always been an only child, a lonely child. And the one time, okay, I'm lying, the few times rather, where he had friends, these friendships never lasted, or they just be moments in passing. The only real friend Jack had was the Scotsman. That's why when they become pals, it evoked a sense of happiness among the audience, because at this point, it was starting to look like Jack was destined to be a loner forever. That was the case in almost every single episode. He was a lonely samurai. One of the most notable episodes is when he goes to Africa and they teach him how to jump good. I think the episode is called Jack Jumps Good or something along those lines. But this wasn't the only instance of Jack making acquaintances and then venturing on his solo mission. This probably is just one huge allegory for how not everyone you meet along the way is meant to take you to the final destination. Some people just appear in certain chapters of your life, blah, 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 blah. You know how the story goes. This will all come back full circle in the final season of Samurai Jack, the 5th season. More on this final season. This is the only time when we ever saw Jack have a female acquaintance, and ironically, it's the daughter of his sworn nemesis. I know, it's like a weird forbidden love story, right? The daughters of Aku are a thing. They literally have daddy issues. Their entire life's purpose is to end Jack to make their daddy proud. Talk about being male-centered. And the last surviving daughter happens to be the one who Jack, I'm guessing, loses his V-card to, so shout out to him for finally inserting his sword into a sheath, if you get my drift. But even at the end, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the finale, they get married, but then Jack ends up being alone again because Ashi ends up fading, as in during the wedding, she just disappears. The reason she fades is because when he goes back to his timeline, technically speaking, she didn't exist, right? So it just has a bittersweet ending to it.
He might be in danger.
A friend of Samurai Jack is a friend of ours. Come.
Even though, yeah, Jack did manage to go home to his family, to be the guy he was destined to be. The last time I checked, he's royalty, but what's the point of being a prince with no princess? But in the end, he still ends up lonely. I think this is relatable to a lot of guys, especially in a certain age range. They feel like we have to face the world alone. Or even if they do find some form of a partner or romance, it's a fleeting moment and then the cycle continues all over again. That's how I interpreted this final scene. It was so sad, it can make a grown man shed a tear. I felt bad for Jack, because after everything he's been through, he finally found some solace and comfort and happiness just for it to get taken away from him. That's an entire conversation of its own, but let's get back to Jack. His mental state is utterly cooked. Let's just keep it a stack. Samurai Jack's mental health is in the gutter, and there's a conspiracy theory that I've been thinking about that could hold some weight, or maybe it's a far stretch, but I'll get into that shortly. It's an interesting one to ponder over. Season 5 is basically Jack's descent into madness. We're slowly watching a man go crazy, but I'm starting to think that seasons 1 to 4 were trying to highlight this the entire time. Okay, look, it's pretty obvious that if anyone was in Jack's position, they would probably start to see things, right? So my theory is that everything To be more precise, Ashi was never real. Hold on, I know what you're thinking. We literally saw the daughters of Aku being born, but how come Aku never really acknowledges his offspring? Is he just a deadbeat dad? Yeah, maybe, most probably. And I know that Aku sees everything that happens in the land, so I know for a fact he should know about them, right? But also that finale kind of ties into this theory because towards the end of season 5, we see Jack and Ashi's relationship bloom. Of course, this is pretty controversial because we don't know how old Ashi is and we don't know how old Jack is. I hope our boy Jack ain't no PDF, but that's a story for another time. Perhaps Jack has become schizo, venturing the lands looking for a portal to go home. I first thought about this after seeing the anime Afro Samurai. Let me just explain it by giving you a short summary. So long story short, Afro Samurai is a revenge story with the main character being named Afro Samurai. He has a sidekick. This guy he talks to basically doesn't exist. And the reason why he has to talk to him is because Afro Samurai is essentially so lonely that this guy is a figment of his imagination and is there just to keep him company. He's pretty much just talking to himself the entire time. His sidekick is his voice of reason, even though his sidekick is pretty unhinged. So I started to think to myself that maybe this is the exact same with a lot of people Jack met throughout the years venturing the lands. It could be a stretch, but it just ties into the fact that how lonely Jack is, and it just probably is one huge allegory for mental health. But at the same time, this theory does have a lot of plot holes because I mean, the Scotsman does exist, or does he? But either way, that ending is bittersweet because Jack finally gets what he wants. He finally gets a companion, but due to the fact that the different timelines and now Jack is back in his current timeline, that means Ashi never existed. Or maybe she never existed at all. I guess we'll never know. Jack is a series that showcases adversity and resilience. I think that's why it relates to its target audience. On a subconscious level, you relate to Jack, even though at the time you watched it, you were too young to fully understand the subliminal messages and themes of this series until years later. Then one day it dawns on you on a random Tuesday at 1 AM as you stare at the ceiling in complete solitude. You're like, hold on, Samurai Jack is literally me. Of course, the creator of Samurai Jack, Genndy, has a knack and liking for making these types of shows with these cold, stoic, lonely characters. For example, he has another show that's similar to Samurai Jack, but it's pretty much Samurai Jack's inferior little brother. It's called Primal. It follows a lot of themes: loneliness, survival, blase blase, the usual spiel. And of course, another show that Genndy helped make was Star Wars, not the one on Cartoon Network called The Clone Wars. There's another one, not the one you're thinking of, not the CGI one. And as we all know, Star Wars has a character, you may know him or not, called Anakin Skywalker, who pretty much resembles a lot of characteristics and traits to Samurai Jack. So Genndy clearly likes doing shows with these types of characters. The only anomaly happens to be maybe Dexter's Laboratory. I don't know. That is just Genndy wanting to make a show about a mad scientist with a Russian accent and a very annoying sister.